Good evening and welcome to tonight's conversation with the candidates. We are sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Houston Area Education Fund and Houston Media Source. I'm Courtney Siegfried, and tonight I'm joined by my co-host Samia Mirza as we speak with candidates for Houston City Council District I. It's important to note that all candidates in this race were invited to attend. We will only, of course, be speaking to those who are available tonight. With that, I'll turn to Samia to introduce our first candidate.
Thank you, Courtney. To get started, today we have Robert Gallegos with us, and I will introduce him before we get started. Robert Gallegos is the incumbent for District I. Robert spent over 25 years in logistics sales in motor, freight, and international trade. He served as a community liaison for former County Commissioner Sylvia Garcia with an emphasis in Galena Park, Jacinto City, Aldine, and City Council Districts H and I. He has worked for the Harris County Sheriff's Department. He's a member of the National Hispanic Professional Organization, a member of the LULAC Council 402, served on the board of the Gulf Coast Community Services Association, and is certified by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Education. He was born at Parkview Hospital on 75th and Harrisburg and was raised in Magnolia Park. Robert attended Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church and Elementary School, where he was baptized, received his Holy Communion, and was confirmed. He attended Edison Junior High School and was active in both the marching and stage bands. Robert became president of Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, and went on to graduate from Stephen F. Austin High School. A graduate of Houston Community College, Robert earned an associate's degree in international trade and distribution and went on to receive a bachelor's degree in organizational management from Ashford University. He is also a graduate of Spencer School of Real Estate. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to jump right in with the first question.
Yes.
With oil prices well below $60 a barrel, many Houstonians are at risk for losing their jobs, and thousands already have. What policies and programs should be in place to protect our city's economy?
Well, what we should do is, in regards to, you had mentioned Houston Community College, for example. I know that there have been some unemployment regarding the low price of oil. It's been mentioned in the news, been mentioned in the paper. Houston Community College, of course, offers programs in regards to trying to learn other skills in education and what have you. And I think that's something that we need to work with our HCC trustees. So that is something that I would work with. Also, regarding the revitalization that's going on in our neighborhoods, it's also important to work with our Chamber of Commerce also to see if and what they can do to help. I'm hoping that this won't be a long trend. Hopefully this is just a temporary trend in regards to the price of oil. As you know, the city of Houston, even though it's not the way it used to be back in the 80s, where we were basically held hostage in regards to the price of oil, I don't personally feel it's going to be as bad, but yes, it's going to affect the city and our revenue that we take in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we know that Houston is an economic powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Despite some of the shocks happening with the economy right now and the energy industry, we're still seeing quite a bit of growth.
Mm-hmm.
However, much of the economic development is actually occurring outside of our city limits. So, for example, Exxon, moving their new campus out to the Woodlands, and Nalco Champions heading out to Sugar Land. So, what can we do to really promote business growth inside our city limits?
Well, that's where we come in with regards to City Council. We try to provide some incentives for businesses to stay within the city limits. When you say that there's a lot of growth going on the outside, I mean, my district does cover downtown, and it's amazing the number of cranes that are in the downtown area and the number of buildings that are going up. not just in the downtown area. I mean, you look towards the Galleria area, there's a lot of cranes out there as well, and also in the medical center. So there is a lot of construction going on within the city of Houston. But yes, I do have to agree that we have to do what we have to do regarding providing some incentives so that way businesses, if for some reason they're looking at possibly going outside of the city of Houston, that they will stay in the city. But I do stress that there is a lot of growth, there is a lot of things going on within the city of Houston, downtown, medical center, Galleria area. I just think that we're doing what we can to keep the businesses here in the city. And again, I think some incentives to make sure that they do stay, especially now with the price of oil. That's something that I think we have to look further to try to make sure that we keep, especially these energy companies within the city of Houston.
So Houston's a large city, as we know, with various levels of economy and economic levels for our Houstonians. According to the Pew Research Center, Houston leads the country in economic segregation, with the affluent more likely to live among the affluent and the poor more likely to live with the poor, with fewer Houston neighborhoods hosting middle-class households. Furthermore, Professor Kleinberg has referred to residential economic segregation as one of our greatest challenges in Houston. What role can the city of Houston play in ensuring that there are thriving mixed-income, middle-class, and low-income neighborhoods in Houston?
Well, basically 2-3 weeks ago, we held a community meeting where we promoted it within my district, where we had community leaders that came to this meeting. And we had representatives from different departments of the city of Houston. For example, there's neighborhoods out there that don't have deed restrictions. As you know, we're not zoned. So if your neighborhood does not have deed restrictions, then there's that possibility that you can have businesses come into your neighborhood, businesses that you may wish that weren't in your neighborhood. And there's really nothing that can be done unless there are restrictions. So we had this meeting and we had representatives of neighborhoods that had restrictions, but they just still had questions. So we had representatives from the different departments there to answer those questions. We had neighborhoods that they would meet on a monthly basis, but yet they didn't have restrictions, but they were somewhat organized. And we were trying to encourage them to, get further information from these different departments. So there's neighborhoods out there that are excited, that want to organize their neighborhoods. They just don't have a way of doing it. And we're going to be having a follow-up meeting. I believe we agreed that it would be sometime in March. So that way they can come back and get other questions answered. And we'll continue to have this while I'm a council member to try to organize these neighborhoods, because that's one way of protecting the neighborhoods, is by being organized and hopefully having some restrictions in place with the city.
Thank you.
So we've asked you a couple of economic questions, and now I'd like to turn a little bit to quality of life, because we know that it's important to consider quality of life if we are to become the world-class city that we are sort of poised to become, if we aren't already. Right? So what are the 3 primary quality of life indicators that you would use as a metric to develop policy around and serve our constituents?
Well, quality of life, first of all, I support the Bayou Greenways project of 2020, where they're looking at doing the hike and bike trails throughout the bayous in the city of Houston. That's something that I do support. I have most of the major bayous that run through District I, so definitely I do support that. Another quality of life issue that I'm working on in District I is that we have issues with stray dogs in our district. Not just in District I, but there's about 4 other districts that are having this issue as well. And you can't have quality of life when you walk outside to exercise, to go around the block, but yet you're having to carry this big stick with you in fear that there'll be a loose dog in the street that will just come at you. So that's something that I have been addressing. So that's something that I'm proud of as well. I've also been working with the Parks Department to provide more green spaces at the parks, regards to and recreational activities as well. So I've been working on that as well regarding quality of life.
Wonderful. So switching gears a bit, unfunded pension liability is a major issue for the City of Houston. What are your ideas about how to address current pension issues and how to prevent similar situations from happening again in the future?
Well, as you know, our pension is controlled from the state legislature. So first of all, I feel that the city is obligated to honor the contracts that we have in place for our current employees. But there is an issue that we do have. I believe it was $3.2 billion or something that we have outstanding there. So what we're looking at, and of course it'll be with the new administration, is to see how we can address that. And what's been discussed since I've been a council member and that I've been hearing is the possibility of setting something up to where from a certain time frame on, new hirees would be under a different system. But the ones that have this contract, we would still honor this contract. And I strongly feel that we're obligated to honor a contract that we've made with the, for example, the fire department. So those current employees, we would honor that contract. But I believe that from a certain time on, it would be under a different system regards to retirement pension. But again, it's controlled through Austin. I understand from listening to some of the mayoral candidates, what they would like to do, of course, is to get other cities that are having issues like this, where we could be a combined force to go to the legislature in 2 years and try to get it switched to where it will be handled through the municipalities and not through Austin. So that's something that I would support as well.
In a city as large as Houston, building and maintaining infrastructure is, of course, a challenge. You hear over and over again in these elections about potholes, right?
Yes.
But infrastructure goes beyond that, of course. So how do you think the city should tackle its infrastructure issues, and how do we pay for it?
Regarding the potholes,
No, and beyond. So
Yeah,
infrastructure goes beyond
okay,
just
but
potholes, so
okay,
beyond.
Well, I mean, I support Rebuild Houston. Of course, that addresses the potholes, that addresses drainage, reconstruction of streets. The issue is that we still have bonds that we're trying to pay off. I understand that by 2018, we would have paid most of those bonds off. So therefore, from that time on, you'll start seeing a lot more infrastructure improvements due to the fact that we will be paying as we go, which is Rebuild Houston. I know there's during these mayoral campaigns and races, you have a few that are the most seem to be in favor of Rebuild Houston, but you have a few that are not in favor of Rebuild Houston. But I do support Rebuild Houston. I think it's a great program. Again, we're paying off our bonds now. By 2018, most of those bonds will be paid off, and therefore we will be able to start paying for projects as we go. And therefore you'll see a lot more infrastructure improvements within the city of Houston.
Great, thank you.
The Houston Equal Rights Ordinance has been quite the topic of debate this year in our city. Do you support it, and
Yes.
why or why not?
I do support it. I did vote for it in support of it. The reason why I voted for it is that it protects 15 characteristics. For example, it protects minorities. If you're Hispanic, if you're African American, if you're Asian, it protects females at the workplace. It protects people that are a disability. I have a brother that's disabled. It protects the military. It protects age discrimination, and that's the reason why I support it. I know that there's misinformation out there that this is a bathroom ordinance. Has nothing to do with the bathroom. This is a discrimination ordinance. It's illegal. It has been illegal for someone to go in the restroom, to cause harm. It's illegal now, and it will be illegal if this ordinance passes. So for people to be putting that information out there, it's misleading the public, and it's just fear tactics. And again, I did support HERO. HERO protects 15 characteristics. And if I had to do it again, I would vote for it again in regards to supporting it. Again, I have a brother that's disabled. I'm his guardian. I've gone to a restaurant with my brother to take him to a restaurant. When feeding him, sometimes he slobbers a little bit. I have to clean his mouth and what have you. I was at a restaurant one time, and there was a couple at the table next to us. I guess they felt uncomfortable. They got up and they moved to the other side of the restaurant. It could have happened where the manager could have come and said, I need y'all to leave. And if I wanted to do something about that, then I would have to have hired a lawyer and gone through the federal process. With HERO in place, I could just go to City Hall and file the discrimination charges that we were told to leave a restaurant. If that would have happened, and the city would have investigated instead of hiring an attorney and going through the federal process. So again, that's why I think HERO is something that would be good for the city of Houston. There's over 200 cities that have this ordinance in place, and not one complaint that a man went into a woman's restroom to do some harm to an individual. So again, that's misleading information, and I wish they would stop doing that because that's not helping the city of Houston.
Thank you.
Given recent events throughout the country, like Ferguson or what happened in Maryland, how can we improve law enforcement relationships with communities of color in the GLBT community?
Well, it's having community meetings. I know our police chief is out there. I had a community meeting. Basically, it was just to give an update in District I, what's going on in District I. I invited the chief. I was pleasantly surprised to see that he was there at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning and to give an update on what the HPD is doing out in the community. And I've seen him at other events as well, similar forums. So that's very important, is for HPD to be involved in the community, to give updates as to what they're doing, to address issues of concern. And I think HPD is doing an outstanding job in bringing that information out to the public.
It has been recently communicated that term limits will be placed on the ballot. As an incumbent and someone that has been in city council and running again for another term, what is your position on term limits? And are you currently in favor of the 3-term limit of 2 years each? Or do you favor the alternative 2-term limit of 4 years each? Or do you have an entirely different approach, and why?
Well, I favor the 2 4-year terms. Right now we have 3 2-year terms, but I would favor the 2 4-year terms that would be on the ballot in November. And the reason why is that I'm completing my first term. I've been in office for 1 year and 9 months. Instead of being out in my community, in my district, and working to better the community and quality of life and public safety issues and what have you, I'm having to campaign basically. So that's taken me away from my job. Not only that, it costs the city $1 million to hold an election. So we would save money in that respect also. With 2 4-year terms, I would, a council member or the mayor or the controller would be able to serve their 4 years and they would be up for re-election. So it's not a guarantee that they're going to be there for 8 years. They're still going to have to run after 4 years. And it's the voter that will choose if they decide to keep them for another 4 years or they're out and they elect somebody new. So it's not that there's not going to be a term limit. It's just that it makes more sense to have 2 4-year terms instead of 3 2-year terms.
And this is it's an interesting question to ask given your district's area. So Houston has a really vibrant theater district as well as a museum district. But many have criticized the city for not doing enough to support small and medium-sized arts organizations and independent artists. If elected again, what would you do to ensure that we have a well-rounded, thriving arts community?
Well, I have the theater district in District I, and of course I have various small arts groups also within District I. So I've got both groups, you could say, wanting monies for their organizations. And I know that they ended up hiring someone to do research in regards to other cities and what they are doing. And that was presented at the Quality of Life Committee meeting not too long ago. I understand this week I received a phone call that an agreement has been reached in regards to the theater district and the smaller groups in regards to funding and how they're going to proceed with that. It hasn't been brought to our attention yet because the call that I received, they were asking my opinion and I hadn't seen anything yet. So I'm waiting to see exactly what that is. But the person that did call me said that both sides seem to be okay with it. So if that's the case, then I would be okay with it as well, since I'm the representative that represents both groups in District I. But regarding details, I don't have that information yet.
And was that in reference to the hotel occupancy tax distribution to the theater district?
And I don't even know that yet. Yeah, because they haven't come back to. I'm assuming they'll be coming back to Quality of Life to give us an update on what they've discussed and what they've come to an agreement. But that has not come to Quality of Life yet. I believe we do have a Quality of Life committee meeting next week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it'll be presented then, but I'm assuming it should. So if it does, then I'll be more than curious to hear exactly what the agreement is to make sure both sides are okay as to possible funding. And again, the gentleman that was hired to do this research, he provided information as to how Denver does it, how Atlanta does it, how San Francisco does this. So there's options out there. I'm just not sure what's going to be presented at the Quality of Life.
As you know, Houston is growing at a very fast rate with a lot of people moving into our city, and many people living in an urban environment where they want to live, work, and play within a close proximity. We've started seeing some bike lanes coming, especially in downtown recently. What are some other ways that we can continue creating and fostering a pedestrian-friendly city?
Well, for example, the protected bike lane that you're referring to is on Lamar Street, and that in downtown, which is in District I. It basically will connect eventually the new Buffalo Bayou Park, with Discovery Green. So I, of course, definitely support a protected bike lane. I would like to see others also constructed. With the light rail line, now that we now have two new light rail lines, the East End light rail line and the Southeast light rail line, which both do come into District I also. That with cycling, and the city of Houston has agreed to do complete streets. So when they redo or reconstruct infrastructure improvements on streets, they also look at possibility of adding bike lanes and sidewalks, so that way it'll be pedestrian friendly and bike friendly, so people can feel safe when walking or riding their bikes. So that's part of the complete streets that we've discussed and we've approved. So I do completely support complete streets because that will help with pedestrian friendly environments.
So along those lines, since we're talking about streets and rail now going through different areas of downtown, what is your vision for transportation in our city over the next 2 years and into the future?
Well, unfortunately, we voted on a referendum not a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, where we are not to build, construct, or extend light rail lines until 2025. So that's why now Metro has redesigned their bus network due to the fact that we're not supposed to be spending any monies in extending or building brand new rail lines. But as you know, our traffic just continues to get worse. I personally supported extending rail lines, but unfortunately that did not pass. So I would like to work with Metro and with the city of Houston to see if somehow there could be possibly another referendum in the near future, to possibly, if possible, extend rail to the Hobby Airport. At least that way we can have some rail to one airport. It'd be great to have it also to Bush Intercontinental Airport, but the closest, as you know, is Hobby. So therefore, it wouldn't cost as much to extend rail to Hobby. But again, since we voted on this referendum a few years ago, there is not supposed to be any extensions or construction of new light rail until 2025. But my gosh, by 2025, can you imagine what the traffic's going to be in the city of Houston? So therefore, I'm hoping if something could be worked out where there could be another referendum, at least for an extension to the Hobby Airport. And if so, I would definitely support something like that.
Great, thank you.
Recently, Houston has been ranked the 15th worst major city in terms of income inequality. What are your plans to bridge the gaps caused by that fact?
Well, one thing I'm working on is that there is a great organization in District I, as TXRX. They are volunteers, basically. They're retired engineers and what have you, where they're teaching students the STEM programs. They have a warehouse in Edo, and they've outgrown their space. They're looking for a new location. The old Rufus Cage School at 1417 Telephone Road, it has the old historic building, and then next to it has like 2 or 3 warehouses where TXRX is interested in maybe expanding to those warehouses. So they've applied for CDBG funding. We're waiting to see if they're going to get the approval for the CDBG funding. But if everything works well, then they'll use that monies to renovate those warehouses. What's really good is that it's centrally located to a lot of schools. You've got Alston High School, you have the Eastwood Academy, you have KIPP Academy, you have Jackson Middle School, Edison Middle School, and several elementary schools in the area, which will all be able to participate going there and learning the STEMs. And I think that's very interesting. That's something that will benefit the students, to encourage them to hopefully go into science and engineering. And that's something that I do support, and hopefully we'll hear something regarding the CDBG funding within the next 2 or 3 weeks. But everything goes well, they'll be renovating those warehouses and moving into those warehouses there in the East End.
Let's talk a little bit about downtown, right, since it's included in your district and is such an important part of our city. What is your vision for downtown after 5, let's say? Because we often, if you come downtown, it's not the same as it used to be, but still if you come downtown, a lot of the people who are here working during the day head on out and get into that traffic that you mentioned a little while ago. So what do you see as some of the possibilities for a vibrant downtown in the evening, and how do we get there?
Well, I think downtown has really improved from where we were at, 5 years ago. Regards to, we have major sports venues. We have Minute Maid Park. We have the BBVA Compass Stadium. We have Toyota Center. The theater district in downtown actually has a theater district master plan. And I've seen their master plan and their vision of what they want to do in the downtown area, so it can be more pedestrian friendly, like you mentioned earlier, so that people can feel comfortable, walking from one side from the Wortham Center over to the alley, and vice versa, and what have you, to the Jones Hall. And then they're also looking at doing something at Jones Plaza, so they can connect everything much better. So these are plans that are out there. They're working on them, and I think that will really encourage people to come to downtown and go to the symphony or to the theater, and to stay downtown and enjoy dinner, or go to one of the entertainment venues in downtown also after the theater or the symphony. So we're headed in the right direction. Compared to the way it was, like I said, just 5 years ago, it's much better. Again, like I stated earlier, there's a lot of cranes in downtown, a lot of residents, high-rises that are going up, and not even high-rise residence units. It's really nice to see that there are apartments going up, 2-3 level apartment buildings that are going up in downtown, and again, you never used to see that, So that's all happening in downtown, which means that there's going to be more people coming to downtown, people that are actually living in downtown. Therefore, they'll be riding their bikes, they'll be taking the rail line, they'll be walking, they'll be going to the theater district, to the sports venues, and all that will be happening in downtown, and is happening now.
Houston is known as one of the most diverse cities in our nation, and as you can just see from our table here, we're a good representation of that. What do you see as the value in our city's diversity, and what would you do to capitalize on this distinction that Houston has?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, as you stated, that's a big thing that we can promote, being that we're the most diverse city now in the United States. We've surpassed New York City. So that's something that we need to take advantage of. It really bothers me when someone says, you should be speaking English in the United States, here in Houston or here in Texas or in the United States or what have you. Well, Houston is a melting pot, we have so many individuals that are here from all over the world, and that's something that we should be proud of. It's something that we should encourage, the different cultures. Right now we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and that's several different Latin American countries that are celebrating their independence from Spain. And that's something that we should be proud of, and it really irritates me when someone's upset that we're celebrating Mexican Independence Day or independence from, or if El Salvador is celebrating their independence or what have you, and I don't see why, why should you be upset that somebody's, proud of their culture, their heritage, and yet they're here and they're working hard and they're building this city, they're building this state, they're building this country. So there's nothing to be ashamed of, and they make it sound like you should be ashamed of your culture, and that's not the case.
Great, thanks. When candidates speak of crime prevention, they often talk about formula of more cops, when in reality that doesn't necessarily get at the underlying roots, root cause of crime. So what crime intervention and prevention policies do you support that can get to, that will systematically reduce crime?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think community policing, former Mayor Lee Brown, who used to be our police chief, he's the one that introduced community policing in the city of Houston. I'm a big advocate of community policing. I think the substations in neighborhoods is very important and very vital. It gives a representation regarding the residents that live in that area, where they feel more comfortable knowing that there is a substation in their community. They see the police officers, at the restaurants, just at the grocery store by chance or what have you. They see them in the community, so they feel more comfortable in addressing crime issues with the police officers. I know that I have the Northeast substation, the Southeast substation, South Central. I have the East End. They're all in District I. So I try to do my best to try to make a PIP meeting from each of those districts. And that's another thing, is that the community goes to these PIP meetings. They have a representative from the various civic clubs or neighborhoods. They can address any issues they might be having in their community at these PIP meetings. And the PIP meetings are very vital. And I encourage people to please go to your monthly PIP meeting at your substation, because there you can hear what's going on regarding if there's crime in the area, or if, unfortunately, if you had experienced crime in your neighborhood. That's where you can go to try to get it addressed. Because if you don't bring it out and let people know that you're having issues, or let HPD know you're having issues, then how are they supposed to know? And this is one way of doing that, is attending your monthly PIP meeting and being active in that PIP meeting. Usually you have the captain of the substation that's there at the PIP meeting. So what better than having the captain of your substation to say, hey, I'm having a problem, we're having problems in my neighborhood. What are you going to do to address these problems in my neighborhood. And the captain will, of course, let his sergeants and the DRT officer and everyone else know that, you know, there is this issue in that neighborhood. Let's go ahead and concentrate and try to resolve that. So I encourage people to attend their monthly PIP meetings at their substations.
And how can constituents find out when and where these PIP meetings take place?
Well, the easiest way is to just call their substation. If, for example, if you live in my district, for example, if you live in the Hobby Airport area, you would call the Southeast substation. That would be where your PIP meeting would be held. If you're in the part of the East End, you would call the East End substation. If you're in the other part of the East End, in the Edo, you would call South Central. And then if you're in the northeast part of the district, you would call the Northeast substation. And they'll give you the dates and the times. But usually, again, it's once a month when they meet. And again, I encourage people to attend those.
Many Houstonians work in the energy industry, and Houston as a city depends on this industry for its vitality as well. Given the fact that oil prices are going down and we've experienced this shock and many layoffs in our city, what role does the city of Houston play in diversifying our economy? And an add-on to that is, what can we do to promote new industries like the technology industry or knowledge industries to come into Houston?
Well, I met with the developer this past week, myself and Councilmember Gonzalez, where the developer is interested in buying some property near the downtown area and offering these spaces where they're not that large, where someone could go, and if they're starting up, you know, in technology or other fields, they can go and lease out these small spaces, which is much less expensive than leasing out a building or a good size building. Where they'll lease out small spaces, they'll get started in their field, in their industry, and hopefully from there they will grow. And that would be new businesses here in the city of Houston. It's a great concept, and we're working with this developer to hopefully that will happen. And he's very excited about it. You know, he feels that this is something that Houston needs, and I and Councilmember Gonzalez agree. We were excited about the presentation that he gave us, and we're working to see what we can do to make sure that does happen. So to answer your question, this is just helping others that have an idea, have a vision of something that they think they can do as a business, and we're helping them as a city, providing them a space at a low cost so they can hopefully grow their idea and actually become a new business here in the city of Houston.
As we diversify our economy, as you know, you and Samia just discussed, how do we ensure? What can the city specifically do to ensure that our Houstonians have a livable wage?
Mm-hmm. That's something that we need to work on. I know that there's other cities that are possibly looking at increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know, and I know that there's some organizations out there that are looking for something like that. I haven't had the opportunity to really sit down and hear both sides. I'm willing to sit down and hear both sides. I just haven't had the opportunity yet. So it's something that I would look into and see if that might benefit the city or not. But again, when given the opportunity, I'd like to sit down and discuss that to see if the minimum wage can be raised in the city of Houston, and if so, what would be the best time to do this. You know, now with the economy the way it seems to be going, I don't know if this is the time to do it or not. So those are questions that I'd like to sit down and ask.
Although it will not be on the ballot this November, it is clear that conversations around the city's revenue cap may continue to surface in our next term. What effect do you think, positive or negative, revenue cap is currently having on our city? And what is your stance on whether or not to lift or modify it?
Well, I personally support lifting the revenue cap due to the fact that I understand that this go round we've had I believe it was $56 million that we were not able to collect in regards to the revenue cap. So that was monies that we could have used for infrastructure improvements or for providing new play equipment at a park that a community has been asking for. So this is monies that we did not receive, and if we keep the revenue cap in place with 126, it's expected that we're going to have a $126 million deficit this coming fiscal year, and then with the revenue cap, that's just going to add to the problems that we may be having in the future due to the fact that we won't have those monies for infrastructure and for improvements for our quality of life in the city of Houston.
Okay. Another maybe more difficult question, maybe not, but Houston has a very strong mayoral system, and we know we'll have a new mayor coming up and after the election in November. So it'll be someone that the city council's not accustomed. That's the word I'm looking for. Accustomed to collaborating with, and given council's somewhat limited power, how do you plan to affect change and sort of this reworked council mayoral grouping?
Well, like you stated, we're going to have a new mayor come January, and we do have a strong mayoral form of government. So, being again, this is my first term. I guess you could say I've learned that, you work with your colleagues. You build a trust with your colleagues. So that way, when there is an issue or a concern that there needs to be a vote on, hopefully you've built that trust with your colleagues and you're asking for their support and their help and their vote to get some things done within your district or in the city of Houston. And sometimes you have to go against the mayor's, wishes or decisions, whatever the situation is at that time. And the only way to get the situation resolved or taken care of is by voting on whatever that is, and of course the majority rules. So if you build that, that trust with your colleagues, hopefully you'll get the majority to vote in your favor, and you get some things done. For example, that was done with the Botanic Garden at Glenbrook. When I just got elected, my first few months was dealing with Gus Wortham golf course. That has been an issue for years in District I as to what's going to happen to the oldest golf course in the state of Texas is Gus Wortham. What's going to happen to Gus Wortham? You had this other group that was wanting to turn that into a botanic garden. So the community was split. So my first 3-4 months was listening to the community. I had various different groups and individuals that were coming into my office. I was willing to listen to both sides and have them give me their vision of what Gus Wortham should be. And by far, the vast majority said they wanted Gus Wortham saved as a golf course. The mayor had made it clear that her preference was a botanic garden at Gus Wortham. So in that time frame of several months, working with my colleagues, trying to build their trust. The day when it came to a vote as to should Gus Wortham remain as a golf course and be renovated by the Houston Golf Association or convert the golf course into a botanic garden that the Houston Botanic Garden Board would take over. It was a unanimous vote. Even the mayor approved saving Gus Wortham as a golf course. And now we have the Houston Golf Association that's going to raise $15 million of private money to renovate Gus Wortham. The Houston Botanic Garden spoke to them, met with them, convinced them to go on over to Glenbrook Golf Course, which is in District I also. And they're going to convert Glenbrook Golf Course into a world-class botanic garden. They're going to raise over $40 million of private money to renovate that into a world-class botanic garden. As a matter of fact, this past Wednesday of last week, The Houston Botanic Garden Board, they had a luncheon at the River Oaks Country Club. It was an overflow of people that were there to see the conceptual plans that were being presented by the design group West 8, and everybody was just thrilled and excited at what's going to be at Glenbrook Golf Course and what's that going to provide not only for District I, but for the city of Houston.
Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned the nonprofit that's working with children and educating them in STEM. Given that the school board, understanding that the school board essentially makes the rules that we have for our school districts, is there a role that City Council plays in the underperformance and overcrowding of schools, of Houston schools? And if there is a role, what would that role be?
Well, I know that Chicago, for example, I believe the mayor's also it's somewhat responsible for the Chicago Independent School District. And Houston, we have, of course, our superintendent, and we have our HISD trustees. So we don't have the day-to-day say-so as to what's going on at HISD. But with that said, I do meet and I do speak with the HISD trustees that are within District I, which there's 2 that cover District I. So I try to work with them to see what we can do. For example, I know we passed bonds a couple of years ago, I believe, regarding rebuilding our schools. And that's something that I have mentioned at council. For example, Millbury right now, they left the facade of the old school, but they tore everything else down. They're rebuilding that school. I understand they want to do the same thing to Stephen F. Austin, and those 2 are in the district. And I have mentioned at council to see if there could be a partnership. If they're going to design this brand new school, they should design it to where they could provide maybe a library for the community. So it could be a dual use. It could be used for the students, and it could also be used for residents that live in the area. With our technology, there's ways for it to be secure. So that way, we can make sure that someone that shouldn't be in the school won't go into the school. But if they need a library and they're in the community, they still should be allowed to come to the library at the school. That way it would be HISD and the city of Houston that are partnering and providing a library, not only for the school but for the community. So that's something I have mentioned to one of the trustees to see if I could get their support. Another situation is at Furr High School. They're going to do the same thing at Furr High School, is tear it down and build a brand new school. In that community, I've been told that they're wanting a community room because they don't have a place for their civic club to meet. They meet at a church, and then they meet at this other place, and they're always moving around. And they said, Councilman, it would be nice if we could have a community room. So I brought that up to the trustee in that area as well, saying, well, if you're going to rebuild for high school, is there a possibility you can do a community room? So therefore, in the evenings, the community can actually go and have their meetings there at the school. So those are partnerships I'd like to work with the HISD trustees and with HISD.
Wonderful.
We're running close on, almost running out of time, but we have a couple more questions left for you. We've heard a lot of conversation in recent years about food deserts. So essentially parts of town where communities do not have close and easy access to healthy foods, or even just a grocery store. So can you talk to us about how you have or plan to address this issue of food deserts in District I?
Well, this is something that actually I worked on when I was the president of my super neighborhood, Eastwood Lawndale Super Neighborhood, and this was several years ago. I had called a meeting with the civic leaders in the area. We had a representative from Kroger's that came to the small Kroger store that's there in the East End. So we met there, and we were trying to let Kroger's know that, we would like for example, a signature store in the area. And again, this was several years ago. At that time, basically we were told after they listened to us that we couldn't sustain a grocery store like a Signature Kroger's. And that was personally was insulting to be told that you can't sustain a grocery store like a Signature store here in this part of town. So let's say if they were correct, that was over 10, 15 years ago. Well, things have changed. You've got a lot of townhomes in Edo. You have a lot of townhomes coming in the East End. The demographics have changed and continue to change. But unfortunately, last week I was talking to a developer, and he was trying to bring in a Kroger's, and he was told again, it just wouldn't work. And I can't see how that's the case, when there's some property that's available right off the Gulf Freeway, about 5 minutes from downtown. As you know, all the residents units that are being built in downtown, in Edo, in the East End, and to be told it just wouldn't work, and something's wrong, because you go to H-E-B at Gulfgate, and that was open 10 years, if not longer, ago, years ago. It's packed. There's always a lot of people there shopping and doing the groceries. The brand new Walmart that's been open for a year and a half, they're on Wayside. My gosh, you go there at 11 o'clock at night, there's a bunch of cars in the parking lot. So we can't sustain a grocery store like a Signature store, Kroger's. And then that was the argument a couple of months ago when Kroger's came to council to ask for an incentive to expand their Kroger's distribution center. Councilmember Davis was upset. Councilmember Boykins was upset. Is that now you're coming to us saying that you want an incentive to expand your warehouse, but yet we ask you to come into our communities for a nice quality grocery store, and you're telling us it just won't work, And I was very insulted to know that they were there asking for an incentive, and I was told at that time that there's a possibility they might be coming in. They're looking at property in the Edo or the East End, so I figured, okay, well, maybe things have changed. But last week when I met with this developer, he tells me he spoke to Kroger's, and Kroger says it just won't work. So again, we were misled.
So in this age of technology with iPhones and Androids, the way we consume our information and the way that we really function in life is very dependent on technology, and it's really changed how we work day to day. In the past few years, we've started the apps for the parking meters. What are other ways that we can incorporate technology, both in how we communicate with Houstonians, but also how we live our day to day within the city?
Well, for example, ARA, who is responsible for, amongst many things, the parking meters for the city of Houston, they have come to speak to me. They're in the process of setting up a system where technology where they will be speaking to some owners that own garages within the downtown area. And therefore, if someone comes to a sports venue or to the George R. Brown Convention Center, they can actually get on an app or their phone, and they'll be guided to a garage that has spaces available for parking, instead of having someone just drive around, figuring out, okay, where's the best place to park. But what I specifically stated when it was brought to our attention that this is what ARA is looking at doing, I want to make sure that these garages that participate in this program with ARA, with the City of Houston, that there's going to be some guidelines on the cost of parking in their garage. I don't think it would be good for the city to be helping them to provide this service of finding customers for their garage, but yet they charge, $40, $30 to park, There should be some kind of guidelines, some kind of limits as to how much they can charge, so that way when somebody comes to downtown and uses this technology, they don't go to a garage and you see, it's $40 to park here for a couple hours or something, So I need to make sure that there's some guidelines to make sure that garages that do participate in this program will charge a reasonable rate to park into their garages.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Gallegos, as it turned out, you are the only candidate that was a part of the conversation tonight, so thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I want to give you 1 minute to tell the voters why they should earn your vote in November.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity of being here this evening. Again, I'm Councilmember Gallegos. I'm completing my first term. I was born and raised and have lived in the district all my life. I've been an active community activist for 30-some years. I was president of my civic club for 15 years, Houston Country Club Place. I was the founder and first president of the Eastwood Lawndale Super Neighborhood, chair of the Rufus Cage Educational Alliance. I was active in the underpass situation regarding Harrisburg. So I've been active in the community. As a council member, I've been working hard for the district. This is something I'm not taking lightly. We were talking about technology. I invite you to go on my Facebook page. I'm always getting compliments on the amount of work that I'm doing in the community, and again, it's because I'm not taking it lightly. I was able to address the Gus Wortham issue. That has been an issue that we've had in our community for years. I was able to talk to the Houston Golf Association. They're going to raise $15 million of private investment to renovate that historic Gus Wortham golf course. I talked to and agreed with the Houston Botanic Garden. They're going on to Glenbrook Golf Course and raising over $40 million to redevelop that green space. So these are green spaces that are still city property, something that's going to bring in economic development. I was also able to address issues that we've had regarding stray dogs. Emancipet came in from Austin. It's a three-pronged approach where it's education, enforcement, and providing low-cost spay and neutering. And Emancipet is doing that at Ripley House with their 48-foot gooseneck mobile clinic. So these are things that I have addressed within my first year and 8 months, and looking forward to going back to City Hall and working hard for our district. And with your help, I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember
Thank you.
Gallegos. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Houston Education Fund and Houston Media Source, thank you for joining us for tonight's conversation with the candidates. If you would like to view the other episodes for other races, please check out the Vimeo channel. Just search League of Women Voters in Vimeo, it'll show up. And also take a look at vote411.org and houston.vote for more information on all of the candidates across the ballot this election season. So, for Samia Mirza and myself, have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.